All right, everybody. Not the result the Celtics were looking for tonight. Their 9-game win streak gets snapped at home to the Miami Heat, 124 to 103. We'll cover that for you. Plus, the boys are back from a little bit of a break here. We were in Boston this past weekend. Shout out to our friends over at the Harp. Shout out to our friends at HBO. We were hosting a watch party there for Celtic City, episode 5 this past Monday night. We're going to hit you with some of those highlights. Plus, your boy's married now. Again, kind of. It's confusing. Been married, got married again, full event. Greg was the best man. We'll give you guys some of the highlights, some of the stories from there. But all that and more is coming up here. This is Green with Envy. We're back, baby. It's the stretch run. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, best man at my wedding, one and only, Greg Manakis. Greg, it's been about a week or so since we've done a live podcast here right now. As always, we talk about this every time. I feel like when we go a week without doing a podcast, it feels like a month. So good to be back. Good to see you. Not the result we wanted to come back on, but it's okay. It still feels good to be back in our little squares here.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've been living life like actually out there in the real world, IRL. So it's definitely weird to be here just doing this on StreamYard. But I mean, coming off that 6-game road trip where the Celtics won every single game, 9-game winning streak. Did you really expect the Celtics to come back and just smack the Heat tonight? Because I was talking to people at work today and I was like, hey, bet on the Heat. Like this is what happens when the Celtics come back from a road trip, especially a successful road trip. They just don't perform well in that first game. And that's what happened tonight. They look dead from the start. Jaylen Brown's knee looks completely shot. Definitely something to be concerned about.
Yeah, let's start there. So you mentioned it. Celtics were 6-0 on their road trip. First time, which was kind of crazy. First time in all of, as we're watching Celtic City right now, going through the history of this franchise that a lot of us, obviously know a great deal about. First time having a road trip of 6-0 to completed just this past week and a half or so, and immediately come back here and we're on a 9-game win streak, went 14-1 in the month of March. And this Heat team, which to be fair, they are on a 5-game winning streak. They're playing some of their best ball since they, moved on from Jimmy Butler, have this new version of their team here. They come away with a 124 to 103 win. There's a chance that could be who the Celtics see in the first round. Not looking super likely it's going to be the Hawks or the Magic, but outside chance I think the Heat could sneak their way into that 7-8 game. But Greg, I think you touched on the biggest takeaway from this game. The 124 to 103, that doesn't really matter. It just simply doesn't. We've been over this already several weeks ago. Celtics were going to have an end of the season schedule where they're locked into the 2 seed. They're not catching the Cavs for 1. It's about getting to the finish line. It's about being healthy. And what you just said about Jaylen Brown, who, because of all the events that we've had over the last week with the wedding, flying to Boston, he's been kind of in and out of the lineup, but I haven't really had a chance after he missed a few consecutive games, and now he's been in and out the last few. Haven't really had a chance to lock in outside of some highlights and some quick condensed games on NBA.com to really watch Jaylen Brown. And tonight, the numbers don't indicate that there's an issue. 24 points, 10 to 20 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Kind of a pretty decent standard Jaylen Brown stat line. But I'm with you. The eye test does not match the stat line from what I saw tonight. What did you see that was concerning?
He can't move, especially on defense, man. Like all of the pop and the uber athleticism that we see out of Jaylen Brown, when he's locked in on D, he's taking the best player on the other team. I can't even imagine Jaylen Brown, as confident as he is in himself and his abilities, could look himself in the mirror right now and say that he's ready to guard any best player on another team at this point physically. Like he can't move out there, man. It's really tough to see. Like you can really tell when a guy's hurt and playing through an injury. Because I think Jaylen Brown's like injured. I think he needs to sit out for the rest of the season. He's not, even if he plays the rest of the games, like he's not playing well enough to get to an all NBA team at this point. He's at 60 games, I think, after tonight. So he'd have to play 5 of the last 6 games or 7 games, how many are left. And if he's playing like he played tonight, I think everyone's going to watch it and say Jaylen Brown just isn't playing at an all NBA level. And it's unfortunate because he had been before he had gotten hurt. It wasn't his best season this year, but with all the other injuries around the league and people missing the 65 game mark, I felt like you could make an argument for Jaylen Brown. Even the biggest Jaylen Brown fan that I am, I just can't see how he would make an all NBA team at this point. And I'm actually really happy that the Cavs beat the Knicks tonight, because early on in that game, it looked like, oh, maybe the Knicks are going to upset the Cavs. Maybe the Celtics take care of business. And now we're only back 3 games with 6 left to play. And maybe there's an argument for the Celtics to go for that 1 seed. Now, being 4.5 games back or 5 games back at this point, there's just really no need to kind of push that. And I'm happy because Jaylen Brown needs to rest. Long story short, he needs to rest. They need to get that knee right because he was not moving well on the defensive end of the court. And offensively, he just doesn't have any lift.
Yeah, I felt like watching Jaylen from the tip, and sometimes it's a little bit of a slow start and it's deceiving, especially when you're watching for something like that. You can almost fool yourself into thinking that you see something that isn't there. So I thought it, and I was like, all right, let's put that in the back of your mind and let's continue to watch the game and see how it develops. And the entire game, it looked like either he was just being extremely reserved and cautious, or he just simply couldn't be explosive. And as the game went on, I was waiting to see if we'd see some differences. And I think offensively, you saw a few quick moments where you could say, okay, maybe he wanted to show a little burst and get downhill. Certainly wasn't elevating as far as, trying to use that part of his athleticism. But overall, it just looked like he was very cautious. He was very concerned with every single movement. His
Right.
his gait as he was running was almost like these little tip tap steps. Like, I don't know
Right.
what the best way to describe it was, but it was certainly wasn't the way he normally runs. Like, that was 100% evident to me. He was not running in a manner
Very
in which Jaylen Brown normally runs.
Yeah, he was very ginger with all of his movements, very measured, where he was playing like very safe defense, where it was like, you know what, here's what I can do. I know that, I can fight over a screen and, force a guy towards the sideline and like rely on my help, but I'm not gonna like do the old Marcus Smart spin around the guy setting the screen and like make an extra effort on defense. Anytime he was closing out, it looked like he could make one effort, right? It was like, I'm going to play to this angle. And if that guy plays into my like smart defensive mind here, then I'm going to be able to stay with him. But if he does anything that I'm not expecting, I can't move and keep up with it. And I think when you said like he looked better on offense, you are the one that's in control. On defense, you're
Yes,
reacting,
exactly.
right? And I think that's a big difference with when you're dealing with an injury.
Yeah, it's like a wide receiver in offense that can kind of play through an injury because you're in control of where you're cutting, where you're going. Whereas when you're a defensive back, unless you're playing a zone in football, right? Like you can't make those cuts. You have to be reactive. You can try to anticipate, but also then if you need to recover, you're going the other way. That's a quick pivot. That's much harder to do. And I think it's a great way to kind of look at what we were seeing on the Jaylen Brown side, where he could pick some spots offensively. Defensively, you're either in it or you're not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like tonight he was just at least reserved. And to me, what that says is don't play Jaylen Brown. Like that's all it tells me, because
Yeah, and
that's all
Missoula
this
got
team
him out of
needs
the
to do is
game.
get to the end.
To Missoula's to credit, he got him out of the game 29 minutes. I think there was like 6 minutes left in the game. It was right after Jaylen Brown, fouled Khalil Ware, where he was like a little bit late on his rotation, and he just didn't look right. And I know he had played like I think they're trying to keep him under 30 minutes. It seems like they might have him on a little bit of a minute restriction. They haven't said anything about that, but they got him out of the game quickly because he was not moving right, man. But it's
So
worrisome, and I want them to rest Jaylen Brown.
yes, I think that should be the plan. The only thing, and I was thinking about this during the game, as to why would you risk this, right? Like, if
Mhm.
you can see what we're seeing, and beyond obviously what we do, whatever's happening in the trainer's room, what you're seeing as you're warming up, like, what would be the thought process on playing through it with, now there were 7 games to start the night, 6 games now remaining. The only thing that I could really think of. And they've called it what, like right knee tendinopathy or whatever, which
Mhm.
I don't know that there's. So I don't know. Maybe there just is no way other than extended rest, which we're getting towards the end of the season. Like it's a finite amount of time. So
Mhm.
the only thing I could really think of as to why you would push him through in like it's been the last week or so, it's been a little bit on and off, like just play one game, sit one game, is that he's going to have to play through this. And
Right.
so you're trying to kind of get a feel of what that looks like, both for Jaylen Brown from a confidence standpoint of when he can push, when he can't push, and then also from a team standpoint of what do we as a coaching staff and as the other players on the court have to look for to know, okay, Jaylen's only going to be able to do these things. We need to have Derek White handling the ball more. We need to, on defense, Jaylen can't be the guy that's picking up the whoever it is that wants to be really physical in the post. We need to switch those matchups. It, when you think of like the minute limit that you brought up, which nothing's been announced, it's just us kind of speculating. Like to me, that's the only somewhat rational argument I can
Mhm.
think to playing him tonight and maybe playing him in another 2 games or so down the stretch or whatever that might look like, is just to have a better feel of, hey, this isn't going to get 100% better until we get 2 months of rest.
Yeah.
And that's not an option right now. So let's make sure that the first time we go out in the playoffs, it's not, hey, we're feeling this out on the fly. Let's
Yeah.
get a feel for it against the Wizards coming up. Let's get a feel for it one of the last 2 games against the Hornets, and then take a week off before the playoffs start, and we'll at least know where we're at. To me,
Mhm.
that's the only rational argument as to why he's still playing right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, man. I was wondering where you were going to go with that, and that was my thought process throughout the game. Is he needs to figure out how to manage this injury and play through it and still be effective. But the playoffs don't begin until April 19th. So if he hadn't
Mhm.
played tonight, he would have had a full like 2.5 weeks of rest. He can still get
Right.
a solid 2 weeks here. So that, I mean, at this point, if that's the Jaylen Brown that we're getting out there, I'd rather risk it and say, he'll figure it out in the playoffs, and he might be able to ease into it in the first round matchup, like figure out how
Mhm.
to do it in the first round matchup, because we're probably not losing that anyway, no matter who we play. I think we just want to give Jaylen Brown 2 weeks off. If they need to do a shot in the knee or whatever, cortisone shot, they need to figure out something,
Still
because
got
it was,
time to fly to Germany.
yeah,
Get
still
that
got
passport
time.
out. We we got time to get him to Germany and back if we need to. This is definitely the time to do it. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think that's probably the biggest thing for the Celtics' health. Obviously, in tonight's game, no Porzingis, no Horford, no Holiday. So it is clearly something that is on the Celtics' minds as we go down the stretch here. One player I did want to highlight tonight, Greg, was Luke Cornett, who started the game off red hot, had another very solid performance, 14 points, 6 rebounds, all of them coming on the offensive side. Um, Kind of a divergent from where I was going with this, but he doesn't start the second half. Do you think that was just entirely a Joe Mazzulla mind game to try to keep some type of edge going? Or I didn't really understand what Mazzulla was doing there, unless this was just a Joe tactic.
Yeah, I'm not really sure on that one. I didn't listen, the post game press conference, but we're recording right after, so I'm not really
Yeah,
sure. I was actually tuning in to the end of the Cavs Knicks game at the time, so I didn't even really catch the beginning of the second
yeah,
half there, because I wanted to see what was happening there. Celtics didn't have it in the first half. They came out completely dead. So maybe they were just trying to infuse some energy, but like to your point, Luke was playing well.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, put the
yeah.
Celtics in a hole, not having Luke Cornett out there. Went from, up to a 22 point game, and they closed it down to, within a couple of points by the end of the third. But that was a weird move by Joe. We'll have to see if we get any answers on that. But I want to talk about Luke Cornett here, because Luke was really good tonight. Luke's been really great all season. We've given Luke a lot of praise, for his performance. And really, when you look at the way that the stable of bigs for the Celtics have been, with Kristaps Porzingis since coming back from that weirdo viral illness that nobody was able to diagnose. Al Horford, the second half of the season, has found the fountain of youth once again, as
Mhm.
he tends to do every year around this time for the past couple seasons. And now Luke has kind of gone up to another level. And Greg, I'm going to ask you a question here that you're not prepared for, so I'm going to be curious to
Okay.
see
Let
how
me
you
actually
answer it.
listen to what you're saying.
Yes, please tune in. I could see your eyes drifting. So I was like, let me set this up and
Okay.
let you know this is something you might not be prepared for. But Billy C. was in the house tonight, new Celtics owner, sitting front row. And so I was thinking, we mentioned this, aside from the pocketbooks being open and being able to spend, it's going to be about some of the tougher decisions on the edges you're going to have to make so that you give Brad Stevens some flexibility. So going into this offseason, we've talked about some of the bigger moves. Here's one of the decisions that right away is going to face Brad Stevens and Billy C right in the face when we get here, no matter what happens, win championship, don't win championship, whatever the result may be. Luke Cornett's a free agent. Al Horford's a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Brad Stevens and Bill comes to you and he goes, listen, Brad, here's the deal, man. I've got a 2-year, $20 million contract. Let's just say it's an option on that second year. We can only pay one of these guys. Talk to their agents. Both of them are in on a 2-year, $20 million deal with an option. You're Brad Stevens, Greg. You can only choose one, Luke or Al. Which one of those would you choose?
For 2 years, I'm still going Al. I think Al
Okay.
Al has proven that he's found the fountain of youth. He takes such good care of his body. The idea of Joe Mazzulla needing a stretch big in that offense, I think Al's just the guy that you got to keep. I think it's a great question though. Luke has played his way into a legitimate contract from somebody around the league.
Right.
Yeah, and I just real quick, I just got to address Alex M in the chat. I mean, I don't know if you're trolling or whatever, man. If you think Jaylen Brown looked good on defense tonight, then I don't know. We just don't see things the same way. He looked terrible on defense, so you can stop trolling in the chat. But Luke Cornett, I think with him, what he's doing game to game in the pick and roll efficiency that you see out of him, setting screens, rolling hard to the rim, offensive rebounding. He had 6 offensive rebounds tonight. I think he's playing himself into a contract that unfortunately is probably going to be too expensive for what the Celtics want, which is really unfortunate because it's been great to see Luke get to this level. What you hope is that you want the player development team and the coaches to look at a guy like, hey, we did it with Luke Cornett. We did it with a guy like Peyton Pritchard. We did it with a guy like Sam Hauser. We can do it with a guy like Neemias Queta, right? We can make sure that he turns into a Luke Cornett, like at least serviceable. Baylor Shireman can become Sam Hauser. JD Davison can become Peyton Pritchard, right? You hope that your player development team is able to get guys to the point where once they're ready to be released out into the wild and go earn the contract that they earned on the Celtics, you let them walk, and I think that's the key to what we see out of a guy like Luke Cornett, and you compare him to Neemias Queta.
Yeah, I think if it's even, you're right, and the years are right. Al's the right answer. There probably is a certain point where it gets a little bit closer, but I wanted to just kind of keep it simple because with Luke's age and with I think they mentioned on the broadcast, right, the best point per pick and roll tandem. It's Jokic and Murray, and then it's Cornett and Tatum, right?
Yeah,
like
Scal even compared Cornett to Jokic tonight. It's like Tommy Heinsohn comparing Steamsman to Bill Russell back in the day.
Yeah, Scal's building up some Tommy takes in his repertoire.
I love it.
It's getting over the top, but that's kind of the point of the home broadcast. But it was something that I think is an interesting call, and I think it might have been Bobby Mann. I can't remember who it was. I think reported that Luke did have a 1-year, $8 million offer, I believe, or something in that neighborhood from the Jazz last season. Turned that down to come back. So I do think there's an interesting time where that's part of the financial discussions as, hey, can we get by with just one of these guys? Luke is available more often than Al is on a consistent basis. Luke's definitely gone up another level. Al is still so much more key to what the Celtics do when it comes to the defensive end, the stretch 3, that, if he's willing to come back, I just think Al, you'll have Al back as long as he'll come back, right? I think that kind of has to be like, right. I can't imagine Al's going anywhere. It's just, can you find a number and does Al want to come back? But I just think the way Luke's played, it's at least a question of where does that balance come in between years and dollars and whatever the tax implications are and what you need to save, because it's very unlikely that both of them are back next year, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, and I think part of it has to do with what they do with Porzingis, If
that's the other part of this as well.
Maybe it's we keep Cornett and Al and we trade Porzingis for, pennies on the dollar.
Right.
Just because
try to save 10-12 million there and take back a lesser player and
right.
Or whatever it might be in that scenario. Yeah.
So
that's the other way it might play out.
Way too far ahead of ourselves. Well, we got
far ahead. Yeah, but it was just Luke playing that well that made me have to think, man, if I had to choose between those two contracts, like I'm at least thinking about it. I'm choosing out, but I'm thinking about it, right? That's
Yeah.
that's a compliment to Luke, who I think was great in this game. Once again, in a night where the Celtics just didn't have it, and that's okay. I think honestly, the Jaylen Brown question is the much bigger part of this for the Celtics team, and just making sure that they get to the finish line healthy. But we will keep an eye on that here as the Celtics now have 6 games left to go in the season here. They're now 56-20. They're 14-2 in their last 16, so hard to be too concerned. But Greg, I looked this up earlier because I was curious. As we're going to start talking about Celtic City here in just a second, in
Mhm.
our experience with our watch party over at the Harp, I was thinking, man, they're 4 wins away from having another 60-win season. How many times have the Celtics had back-to-back 60-win seasons? And I'll ask you that trivia question here first. How many times in Celtics history do you
Dude,
think the Celtics have had back-to-back 60-win seasons?
I don't know. My brain's not ready for a trivia question right now, Will.
That's
I'm
fair.
just saying.
That's fair. I will answer it for you
Yeah.
then. The answer is 4 times. It's 4
Okay.
times. So since 67, 68, which is when the NBA went to an 82 game schedule, it's happened 4 times. The Bird Celtics did it 2 separate times with spans of 3 years, 80 to 82, 84 to 86. And then, of course, the beloved second Big Three era with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. They did in 08, did it again in 09. And then this would be the 4th occurrence of it this year or last
It's
year
pretty rare.
plus this year. So pretty rare for a team with the history that the Celtics have here. So 4 out of the next 6, they got to go 4-2 down the stretch here with the remainder. Stay tuned. We'll have more coverage on that as the Celtics look to close out this season and remain healthy and set up for the postseason. Now, let's talk about our weekend, Greg, and we'll do it in kind of reverse order here. We'll start with the Celtic City watch party that we had at the Harp on Causeway Street across from the Garden. Shout out to our friends at the Harp. Shout out to HBO Max for having us out, getting us out there on what was a whirlwind of a trip, going directly from my wedding weekend right onto a plane Monday morning. Monday night, we're at the Harp. Tuesday morning, we're on a plane back to Texas. I had a great time, man. That's actually the first live event that we've done. We've done some cool, remote events with Bleacher Report and others. But that was the first live event that we've done, hooked up with Green Runs Deep, aka GRD. It was cool getting to see some people in person, meet some new fans that maybe are hopefully checking us out here. And I know you're probably ready to shout out a bunch of people. I know you're really good about getting directly to the personal connections that we made. But it was really cool to be able to be in person with a setting of intimate, like an intimate setting with a bunch of Celtics fans that some we know, some we don't know, and get a chance to kind of celebrate this team and the history of this team through the documentary.
Yeah, man, it was just a cool experience, the turnaround for me, like I officiated a wedding 2 weeks ago. I'm best man at your wedding where I got this big old emotional speech that I got to give, and then I'm performing this song that I've never performed before. It was a lot, and then to turn that around into flying to Boston, hosting this watch party, got to be on and got to be on, you got to be on. It was definitely a lot, but it was a lot of fun to just like have some quick interviews with people, sit down with the fans. Got to see some old college buddies, which is great. Got to see my boy Mike Trav that I hadn't seen in like 8 years. My boy Matty Manning, who it was his birthday. Samson Lou came out. My uncle Sam came out. We saw we so many people. Your guy Peta from what's it, Mathematic? Is
The
that what they're called?
Mathematic Athletic, shout out to
Yeah.
them. Yep.
Yeah, Mathematic Athletics. Brandon Wahlberg came out, Donnie's
B Wally.
nephew, B
Mhm.
Wally, that we've been friends with since we were kids. So it's cool just to see all those people out there, man. And then Green Runs Deep bringing his crew through for the watch party. It was just a really fun experience, and it's something that I would love to do when I have just like a little bit more in my social battery. And I would love and I would love to.
That was a big word for us on Monday and Tuesday is what do we got left in the tank? And we tried to leave it all in the field, everybody. We
We did.
we did our best.
The fact that we're doing a podcast right now is amazing. Like as you saw with my guy Alex in the chat, I don't have time for anyone's bullshit tonight. It's just like I'm here. I'm happy. I'm happy to be talking to you, and like it's a lot of fun to be out there and just doing this stuff live, and interacting
Mhm.
with people. It's something that I really miss in the post-COVID world and the COVID world where you just weren't seeing enough people, and it just like kind of turns you into a hermit. And getting back out there and just talking to people and thinking about, the future of the podcast and like hosting live watch parties and whatnot and building those relationships. It was just a nice change of pace from something that for the most part we just do like in an empty room,
Yeah.
like it's just me in my room and I'm
It's just
talking to you.
us in our homes
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it. And
So
this is
it was
literally
great to be in person.
and this is the same chair that I sit in all day with, shout out to Dutchy, my guy Bill and his friends coming through from the Dutchy crew is, this is where I am all day, every day, whether it's my night job, which is the podcast, or if it's my day job doing sales for Dutchy. This is
Right.
kind of where I live. So, even though it took a lot of effort and, obviously it took my wife being very generous with our time and our
Dude, she's a
post-nuptials
fucking
to say,
legend. She's a legend.
to allow for me to be able to do this. I'll be making up for it for quite a while. Yeah, it'll be a lot of arguments that I'll have to default on, but it was worth it. Yeah, it was worth it, and she's the best. And so it was cool to be there. It was cool to connect with everybody that we got a chance to talk to. I do feel bad for our friends from Australia, from Adelaide, Vince and his wife Monique, who flew out not specifically for this event, but to come see the Celtics, and then ended up at the event as well. And they came out to see 2 games. They got tickets to the Heat game, tickets to the Suns game. Obviously, they bought them way back when the Heat were more of the Heat with Jimmy Butler, and they get this performance tonight, and they get a Suns team without Kevin Durant coming up here in a couple of days. So hopefully you guys are still making the best out of it. Hopefully being part of that event made the trip feel, took it to even a higher level. But it was cool getting to meet people from all over that have different connections to the Celtics. Maybe they're checking us out now for the first time. And then the documentary itself, dude, I'm continuing to enjoy this documentary. This past episode, focusing really on the Celtics-Lakers rivalry of the mid-'80s, of it finally kind of culminating in the 84 NBA Finals, the 85 Finals they lost, in 86 where it should have been Celtics-Lakers, but the Lakers lose to the Rockets. Something that really stood out to me as I rewatched it this morning, because at the bar, it was, we were watching it there, but we were also kind of running around doing a bunch of content stuff. Who's been unexpectedly awesome for me in this documentary, Greg?
Big Chief?
Yes.
Yeah.
Robert Parrish has been unbelievable, dude. He's his PER when he's on screen is through the roof. And I just don't think I guess I haven't really heard him talk all that much in my life. His voice is also hilarious. So I think that's a part of it. But when they were talking about the Celtics having this team that was labeled as like this white boy team, and at least even for the first beginning part of the 80s, before they traded Gerald Henderson and put Danny Ainge in, they still had like 3 or 4 black starters and a rotation that was, 70% black or 65% black. And he said something about, I always just thought it was like the chocolate chips in the cookie or something like that.
Yeah.
Hilarious line.
That was great.
And yeah, man, dude, the Chief has been unbelievable. He's been very real, very transparent. I didn't know about the beef between, him and Larry in 83 and why he didn't hop into the Philly fight. That was interesting to learn about, but he's been very candid. And I think he's been a really big highlight for me in this documentary.
Yeah, I think the documentary's done a wonderful job of just highlighting Black Bostonians as well, because that is, the Ringer, right? Bill Simmons, who's producing it, just did the rewatchables for Good Will Hunting, right? And like when you think about all the Boston movies that are out there, it doesn't really show that side of the tracks. And I think it's so important to represent just like an underrepresented group within Boston, because that's something that like growing up, we like in certain neighborhoods it's mostly white people, but there are plenty of neighborhoods where it's not, and there are like a lot of
that's why our experience is so unique, right? Because we grew up as, you're half Chinese, half white, but you look like you're not full white, right? Like, let's just say that, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm Brazilian, I'm adopted, I have white parents, and we grew up in one of those sections that was primarily white, where you could mostly think about, all right, who are the handful of non-white kids, and we
Mhm.
could span like your sister's what, I think 4 years older than us to
Right.
maybe like 2 years younger than us, and we could probably name every single person in that like 6 year age range of like the 2-3 neighborhoods that compromise the area we grew up in. But then as
Yeah.
soon as you and I started going to public schools and went away from the local parochial schools,
Yep.
it was like, oh, here's Boston. It's so
Right.
much more diverse than what we see here. And what does get depicted, like you said in the movies, is more so white Boston with just like a sprinkling of these other elements.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that was really interesting hearing. I think it was Dart Adams and Howard Bryant like sitting on the
Mhm.
park bench kind of talk about, which I actually didn't know Howard Bryant was a Boston guy until this documentary. But yeah, I think that's been another element to this that has been somewhat enlightening. And then especially the Celtics players talking about they know what was happening outside of their world of like, man, why the fuck are we the white team?
Yeah.
There's and then they were
Yeah,
like
it's like
trying
we
to
got
defuse
Casey
the
Jones
between.
here in the sideline. They got Pat Riley. Like we got the
Yeah.
black coach. Like
Pat's the whitest dude going. He's the
right.
like, so it's really interesting to hear. And then what was it? Cedric Maxwell and Danny Ainge talking about how they're black, white, and white, black. And then
Mhm.
Larry was talking about how, yeah, I'm black guy on the inside, white guy on the outside, insulted by
Right.
white guys guarding him. So I think
I, li-
that's
I
been
like how, yeah, I like how the documentary hasn't run from it. They've just said,
right.
listen, this is a narrative. Like we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it in a real way that's going to resonate with people instead of the typical like sugar coated shit that you see,
Mhm,
like any depiction where people are scared to talk about race. Race is a reality that we all deal with. Like we don't need to run from it. We can confront it, talk about it, and have intellectual conversations about it, which I think is so important, especially in today's political climate where everyone is just getting further and further away into their
mhm,
own little silos. Like we're a freaking community. And I think that's why, going to the event, going back to like the harp event, like being out there with all different types of people was just beautiful. I love being around people from different backgrounds and different upbringings. That I think
mhm.
it's what makes being a sports fan so important, which is another thing that this documentary is showing, is that sports has been the thing bringing this city of Boston together for,
Right.
decades and decades.
Yeah, I remember explaining to my now wife Lorena one of the first nights we met because she's not really into sports. So she was like, "Oh, you're like a really big sports guy. Like what? Like why do you like
Yeah.
sports?" And there's like the very simple reason if I grew up with it, I play it. It's fun. Like there's that side of it. But like when we were having like I remember it was one of our first dates, and we were having like a deeper conversation about it, and I was like, it really is a connector of
Hmm.
so many different parts of society, whether it be racial connections, it's political beliefs, like there's all the it's rich versus poor, middle class,
Hmm.
like there's a connection through line for all of this. And I think that's part of the reason to me when some people are like, well, it's just sports, and in certain respects I agree, it's just entertainment, it's just sports. But I do think that a there's a bigger view of a bigger world connecting view that is what truly actually makes sports special as opposed to
Yeah.
just it's entertainment. And I think this documentary is just something that's doing a really good job of illuminating that. And of course this one ends on a really fascinating what if, a really sad, fascinating what if
Heartbreaking every time.
in Celtics and NBA history and life, with the story of Len Bias, where I actually had never seen that press conference in all the Len Bias stuff where he talks about, yeah, like, I got a date with Larry about him
Hmm.
being like the mentor, and I think it's either 24 or 48 hours after that clip, he's dead. And so them going into that, and then eventually, I don't know if Reggie Lewis is going to be in this episode or the next episode, but the next two episodes are basically going to be about, Celtics
The
Celtics
lost,
players
the lost
that,
decade.
yeah, the lost decade, the lost. I was talking about this with a few people at the event. It's kind of interesting when you think of Len Bias should have overlapped with Reggie Lewis. Like that was the
Hmm.
connection. It's going to go from Larry Bird to Len Bias, from Len Bias to Reggie Lewis. And of course, maybe we don't get Reggie Lewis because of all those other things, but it goes from there. And then you get to Paul Pierce. And then now eventually you get to the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown lineage. And like that could have been the through line of your wings. And specifically when you go from Len and Reggie, it's two, African Americans, it's two black guys that then you look at what you have now with Jason and Jaylen. Right.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of looking at those connections. And yeah, I think these next two episodes are going to be two of the more anticipated episodes for me of the series here. And I'm very curious to see how they do it. I know our friends over at Mathematic Athletics are going to be doing an event that hopefully we can get them on here to talk a little bit more about around Reggie Lewis and doing something at the Reggie Lewis Center for that
Yeah.
particular episode. I think coming up in a couple weeks. So stay tuned. We'll have more on that. But again, big shout out to our friends at the Harp, our friends at HBO Max. It was great to be on there. We'll have a recap video going up here in the next day or two. So be on the lookout for that. And quickly, Greg, here, we'll just wrap this up quickly because I know our social battery is running on E here. But had an amazing weekend with the wedding over the weekend. You were 100% the MVP of that weekend.
Hey.
But between the best man speech and the song that you, my brother-in-law Kike, and our efficient Gigo produced, I am so excited for us to get the videographer footage back of that. If you're following either of us on our individual accounts on Instagram, you probably have seen a few just, shots from people at the wedding. And then for that song to drop on Spotify, which will 100% be the new song at the end of this podcast. That's already been an official decision. But fucking amazing weekend, man. Just simply amazing. Couldn't have had a better weekend from start to finish.
Yeah, I think, when you were talking about the kind of melting pot that Boston can be, I think what was so cool about your wedding is just all the different like cultures that were there. And I thought that was so cool to have the mix where it was like literally a line down the middle where Lorena's Mexican, relatives and friends, and then your, mismatch of people on your side, and just to bring everybody together. It was so cool. Like Mark, our guy, Mark McDonough, who's been on the pod before, wrote a great book. If you're someone who likes reading, I Felt a Funeral by Mark McDonough, go get that on Spotify. Hopefully Mark releases a sequel at some point, but he was just so fascinated by seeing the mariachi music that was at your wedding, which is just like so cool to see him. He came up to me. He was like, he obviously shit faced at the time. And he's like, you're talented, but that guy is one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard in my life. Like, he's just so fucking beautiful. Like, are you kidding me? He's up there singing right now. He was just like freaking out about how talented just like Lorena's friend group is. Like, they're so talented, man. It was such an honor to make that song with them. And it's going to be sick when it drops on Spotify, because this all started with you introducing me to Gigo at your first engagement party, and Gigo telling me that he wanted to do this song, and we didn't have any ideas. He said, I want to do a song for Will and Lorena, and he just like dropped a beat, and like right there I just came up with the to the bone to the bam hook, and which is the whole like idea of the song of the wedding. It was kind of the through line throughout, and it happened like in that moment.
Yeah, it did. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited for people to, who weren't at the wedding, that didn't get to experience it live. I cannot wait for them to get a chance to hear it. Yeah, just one of those things where it doesn't even feel real, especially as I'm seeing, more and more pictures that have come out from it. We'll get our official pictures and videos in the next couple of weeks or so. Just an amazing weekend. And then, of course, capping it off with our trip to Boston. And now we are here fulfilling our final duties for this week. Typically, we do have a Friday coffee and C's podcast. I'm going to say we're probably going to skip that this week, and we'll get back to it next week. We will have I messed up in uploading one of our recent episodes that is already on our audio feed here with CNN's John Berman. I'm going to put that up on Friday for everybody on the YouTube page to make sure they go check out. Our guy John was really fun to have on here from CNN. We get into kind of a more evergreen Celtics discussion of Celtics history. So that will be up and running on Friday. But starting Sunday, Monday, we're going to be kind of back to our regular schedule here as we look towards the playoffs. So Sunday or Monday, expect a podcast. Friday, we'll have coffee and C's. That will be a regular thing going forward. And then as we get into the playoffs, we'll see what the matchups are, how it dictates. We'll probably have a lot more post games during the postseason as it dictates it, depending on what the game schedule looks like. But we're going full tilt here. We got our guy Alex G in the shadows that's doing the damn thing, getting the content out there for everybody, making sure that we got reels, that we got YouTube shorts. So he's putting in hard work. We're gonna be putting in the work here. We're gonna continue to put in that work here and get you guys what you need. So appreciate and love everybody that's been following along, everybody that showed up at the Harp, anybody that's new to this podcast potentially. If we met you at the Harp, be on the lookout. We're going to be cutting up some of those interviews that we did. We'll be putting those out for content as well. Greg, it's an honor to have you as my best friend, to have you as my co-host. Let's keep doing the damn thing, baby. Celtics didn't win tonight. That's all good. We're in for a long run here. We're going to be in the thick of it here through mid-June. Feel it in my bones. Are you ready for it?
Dude, I'm ready. Let's lock in.
Let's lock in. All right, guys. We will catch you guys on Sunday. CNN's John Berman interview going up on YouTube this Friday, already available on our audio feed. Hit us up wherever you see us on socials. Email CelticsNoise@gmail.com. That does it for this episode. We will catch you guys later. Peace.